going to start again with extinction segment. We're close to extinction here on Earth. We are the last generation of humans on Earth. That's what we say in this channel. Okay, you're welcome to challenge us. Okay. Anyways, let's start with this. We have all these wars going on. We have Ukraine versus Russia, Israel, Hamas, China, Taiwan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, North Korea, South Korea, India, Pakistan, and I'm sure there's several more. And my only recommendation to you is don't pick sides. Okay, what are sides? Well, they're just mafias. Okay, and you know, the people who rule the planet, they don't care about the petty people out there, the ones who go out into the streets and burn tires and break windows. Those are the fanatics who choose sides. These people don't care. And, there you have a scenario. Should you choose Bugs Moran over Al Capone? I mean, which mafia do you think is better? Okay, and so that's more or less what it comes down to. I was recently in Jordan, Amman, and it was funny. The prince got married, Hashemite with a Saudi. They're trying to unite the crown, sort of, the wealth. The rich marry the wealth, the rich marry the rich, the wealthy. And turns out that you see there that there's a problem. Here we have a war between Israel and Hamas, right? And an invasion, whatever you want to call it. And it turns out that all the Arabs are up in arms. They're all upset, right? And what did the leaders do? And this gives you a little focus on what's really happening. All the people out there, they choose sides. They say, oh, this is injustice, and that should be like this, and that should be like that. And what do the rulers, the people who rule, do? Well, Jordan and a couple other countries, Turkey, etc., they're so upset, and they recall their ambassadors. They say, "Oh, this is an outrage. We're going to recall our ambassador." Sounds very cosmetic. It's like, let's throw a bone to the dog there. Keep them happy. You would think that under a situation like this, where they're killing people, these people would be a little more adamant and say, we're going to cut all commerce with Israel. And you have all these Arab nations cutting all their commerce with Israel. Not one of them did so. They're all recalling their ambassadors, which is very cosmetic, which is nonsense. Because as soon as this war ends or whatever, because it's going to end someday, I'm sure, well, they're going to put their ambassadors right back in. But see, they didn't cut their economics. They didn't touch their economics because it hurts them as well. They'd be shooting themselves in the foot. So they only give lip service to this whole thing, and then they try to figure it out, in close quarters, how they're going to solve these things. So my suggestion is don't take sides. That's what I learned from politics. Don't get involved with politics. Okay, there's one site, there was an article, and he talked about the end of humanity. Humanity will wipe itself out, right? And the Sci-Fi put this article that was published, and it's got this notion that the 14 most likely ways that we will disappear, right? And the problem with this whole thing, with this whole approach, is they looked at all the relations, between technology and, different things that we have out there, and they put them all together, and they say, well, these are the 14 things that we think may cause the extinction of man. And as always, they have hope that maybe we can fix these things as long as we're aware, right, that of what the problems are, and maybe there's a way to correct them. Even though they start by saying that all species eventually become extinct. It's like, but since we're smart, we're intelligent, we have technology, we can foresee the future, maybe, just maybe, we can avoid it somehow or postpone it, who knows, another 1,000 years or whatever. And so they missed the boat. These people are saying essentially that there are all these causes, but they miss the main one, which is the collapse of the global economy. That is a guaranteed way of killing man. Right now we wouldn't be able to survive if we didn't have commerce, if we didn't have trade, if we didn't have money. And just imagine if God waved his magic wand. Oh, here I've got one magic wand, right? God waving his magic wand, and suddenly makes money disappear. And by that I mean that people no longer believe in money. They don't accept money, and so you can't give them money. You got to give them something a little more solid, than money. And this is the issue. The issue is if we can make money disappear, even by magic, right? What would happen to humanity? Well, I can guarantee that we would all die, because without trade today, right, humanity cannot last. We need money, we need trade, we need commerce. Okay, we need to trade stuff, exchange. That doesn't happen. Well, we do not receive food, and just about nobody produces his own food. Everybody goes to the store and waits for someone to put something on the shelves. It appears apparently by magic, because you just go to the store with money, right, with bills or with a credit card or debit card, whatever, and they give you food. Are people stupid? They're saying, hey, I'm giving you something real, something you can use like food, and you're giving you what? A number in a bank account? What the hell's that? Well, the only reason they accept that is because they can do something with that number. They can pass it on and buy a car or whatever. But imagine if people suddenly realize that that's just a number you gave them. You're on an island, and one guy's got a banana and the other guy's got a number. Let me give you a number for your banana. I don't think it would work. So money can only subsist under certain conditions. And I think that's what's going to happen. Money will disappear because the global economy cannot grow forever. At some point, there's going to be a crash. It's not going to be a simple recession or depression. It's going to be extinction. That's what it's going to be. Without economics, we're all dead. Anyways, here one fellow says, you said that Calhoun, referring to John Calhoun, who did the experiments first with rats, then with mice, that was the first to create homosexuality in the lab. Yeah, one of the first, I think. There's a couple other experiments out there, one with fish that I know of, so you got to look around. But essentially, Calhoun created homosexuality and you could say autism as well in the lab, okay? Or in other words, homosexuality induced by human intervention. I disagree, as prisons have been around since way before Calhoun, right? And prisons induce homosexual behavior, and we know for certain why this is. Okay. So are we certain that the enclosed conditions and lack of available mates of the opposite sex didn't contribute to these conclusions? Well, what can I tell you? First, I want to address that prisons induce homosexual behavior, and we know why that is. Well, I don't know where you got that. I've been through at least 7 prisons in my 3 years in the slammer, and no problem. I found all kinds of people in there, and essentially it's a microcosm of the people out in the free world, right? There's very little difference. And I think you could safely divide people inside the prison in 2 halves, general, that's just a rule of thumb, okay? And that is that half the people hate them and despise homosexuals, and the other half tolerate them and say, well, that's their business, I don't care, So that's more or less the attitude that's in prison. Now, I just want you to think about something. You go in prison and you find this gang, right? And the leader of the gang says, I think I'm going to have sex with the next guy comes in here. What do you think his gang members, his bros, what do you think they would think about him? They say, oh, you want to have sex with a man? That's what they would think. So no, this thing that they rape you the first day that you come into prison, it's a myth. Okay, it doesn't happen. Sex is not that great in prison. And so what happens is that, the authorities, they want that myth to spread. They want you to believe it so that you're a nice guy and don't go to prison. Okay, that's more or less, it's a deterrent, right? But no, I don't know where he got this thing that prisons create homosexuals. Homosexual, the guy is born that way. And I don't know why anyone would say anything different. If you see a Down patient, Down syndrome patient, everybody looks at him and says, "Well, he was born that way." They didn't make him in school or at home like that. Teaching him to be like that. He was born that way. But when we get to these other things like homosexuality people or autism, they say, "Well, that was schooling." Why would you change that? What's different? And that's what you got to show. You got to explain what is different between, being homosexual and being a Down patient. Is there a difference? Isn't this a mental disorder? Well, the Psychiatry and Psychology Associations of America, they said in 1973, and the other one I think was 76, they ruled that it wasn't a mental disorder and they took it out of the books, out of the mental disorder books. But why? Why did they have to do that? Because there were so many people coming into their office say, "Cure me, doc. I got a problem. Yeah, I'm homosexual." "Oh, you're homosexual?" "Yeah. And so please cure me." What was the doctor going to do? What was a psychologist or psychiatrist going to do? Give him a shot in the arm and say, "Okay, you're cured now"? There was no cure for this. And there were so many, they flooded the psychiatrist offices, and they finally just said, "Hey, this is very easy. We're just going to say this is not a problem. If you can live with it, you're okay. And if you can't, well, I don't know, maybe you commit suicide or go to some kind of care, association takes care of you guys, So that's the way they handle it. So now you got to show, why this is so, why. The question is, why do we have so many homosexuals today? Is it that suddenly they came out of the closet because there's more freedom, there's more information? Or was there a real problem, where they invaded the psychiatrist offices and they said, and the psychiatrist said, "Hey, there's a flood here. We got to do something about this." And very easy. They said it's not a disorder. That's how they solved it. And so today we don't have these as mental disorders as they used to be. Okay, another fellow talking about similar subjects says, about Calhoun, why did the mice stop breeding? Okay, I think it was because the mice got stressed out. Okay, they didn't become autistic. They just moved away from all the fighting. Okay, you can really mess animals up by raising them wrong. Interactions with their environment cause physical changes in the brain. But you got to tell me the mechanism. All you made is a statement, said, environment causes these mental changes, okay? Person now thinks in a different way. What's the mechanism? How did the environment change his brain? That's what you got to kind of explain. If you can do that, I'm not saying it's something you're going to think about in 2 seconds and come up with an answer. You really got to get down to this, because you're saying that the environment somehow induces changes in behavior, okay? So we got to figure out how that is so, density in this case, right? So what I can tell you is lack of genetic diversity is nature, okay? That means we're born that way. If there is lack of genetic diversity in the entire human race, as I've argued in the past, where, I argued that we have a troop of chimps, and they have more genetic diversity, maybe 100 monkeys there, they have more genetic diversity than the entire human race, 8 billion people. You got to explain that. Why is that so? And the question is, again, science is about explaining. You got to explain the cause, okay? What caused that to happen. And then you have environment, and that's nurture. It's schooling, it's how you were raised at home, influence from society, whatever. Okay, so we would call that nature versus nurture. Okay, mice and rats did in fact become autistic, or as Calhoun said, he said they stopped being mice. Okay, for the mouse, the mice group said they stopped being mice. What he meant by that is these mice were kind of like, dumb. They were just in one corner. All they would do, come out, maybe eat, and then go back, right? They were chased by some of the other mice who'd bite their tails and made them bleed and so on. But these were stupid mice. They're not the mice that you find out there in the fields or in the railroad tracks that move around. They're smart and, they're worried about their environment, who might attack them, who they can attack, etc. These mice were just complacent. And in a sense, you can see why. If these mice did not have to struggle for food or water, they were given all the food and water they wanted. They had all the nesting material, etc. They had no predators. So you develop a different kind of mouse. But the issue here is whether this mouse, right, is made through nature or nurture. Because all these mice, we're talking about the last generations where there was high density. That part is nurture. But they all come from the same grandparents. You have this founder's effect. And so the question is, did that cause the mice to be different? Okay, was it genetics? In other words, going inside their body, and how much of each? You could also discuss that. So you got to look at the whole picture, not only say, oh, it was the food they ate or the density. Density obviously was a factor, but what about the genetics? The fact that they all descend from the same grandparents. And so, yeah, again, was it nature, nurture, or both? That's what you got to kind of resolve. Okay, and you should keep all the factors in mind, not jump to conclusions. Okay, just go in there and say, okay, what could have caused all this? Okay. Okay, so here we have more on autism. Okay, a fellow says you should explain autistic psychology before telling us what causes it. Autism and retardation aren't the same thing. They are both side effects of mutational load. Okay, and well, what can I say? I'll put this up here. And that is that science, we deal with rational explanations. And we separate physics from philosophy, the only two branches of science. You either do physics or you do philosophy. Physics deals with objects, causes, and mechanisms. Philosophy deals primarily with concepts, reasons, and purposes. You want to know why someone did something, why someone behaved in a given way. And so when these people bring up these subjects, here we only do physics. We do not do philosophy. Philosophy, we don't explain reasons and purposes. At least that's not what this channel is dedicated to. Sometimes we touch upon the subject, but that's not our main course. Our main course, by far, is physics. We want to see how the physical world works, okay? And so, yeah, when it comes to autism, you got that situation where you say, how much of it is nature, how much is nurture? Nature would be physics, nurture would be, philosophy. And so, again, we got to start at square one. Is autism a consequence of both? Okay, or is it primarily, that we have it in our blood because we are the last humans on Earth? We've been inbreeding for 200, 300,000 years since Adam and Eve came into the record. So we've been inbreeding for a long, long time. And we're 8 billion people now. We all come from those same predecessors, right? So the question is, does this inbreeding produce effects in the long run? And that's the question before you. That's the one you got to answer. That's the way I look at it, at least. Okay. Here's another fellow says, when one researches autism rates by country, it appears that every study has conflicting results. No research groups, can agree on the data. So is it reliable? Well, we don't want to throw the baby away with the wash water. Okay. Yeah, we've been collecting data for autism for a relatively short time, maybe a few decades. And before that, nobody cared that much about that subject. It's a subject that has grown in importance. And I think in partly because we have more children coming out with autism and attention disorders and who knows what else. And the question is this again a consequence of density? Is it the education at home? Or is this something we carry in the blood? Is this related to the fact that we've been inbreeding for so long and that we've washed out our genes, our genetic diversity? Okay, so again, it all comes back to that question. Not easy to answer. I'm going to say this is something that you're going to wake up one morning and say, I got the answer. But you got to do a lot of research and on both ends of it, not only on the density and education on the nurture part, you got to look at nature as well. How much of this comes inevitably in our species because we've been inbreeding. It doesn't happen to all species. And I say it does. It does. You find a lot of this stuff among lions, sheep, homosexuality, you'll find it among sheep and lions. And I'm saying this is something new, partly because we have much fewer lions today, so they can't avoid inbreeding at an extreme level. That's one issue. But the other one that strikes in my mind is, we used to have lions, especially when they brought them into the Roman circuses, the Colosseum. And so they used to know a lot about lions, or they've seen lions, and nobody, I can't say all the way from the Romans, but at least maybe a few hundred years ago, nobody ever mentioned that lions were having sex with lions, male with male. And this appears to be something new, and that would explain, partly not because of density, but because of lack of mates. We had about 150,000 lions in the world, primarily in Africa. What was it, in maybe 40, 50 years ago? Now there's only 30 or 35,000. So the population has been dwindling. And that means that now you have almost no choice but to have sex with a cousin. Okay, so I think that's part of the problem. Okay, now a fellow talking about autism says autistic brains are about 3% larger. However, for whatever reason, this doesn't really translate to higher IQ. Okay, the problem here is this IQ issue. The IQs really have a lot to do with, how much you study, because you're going to be doing some math, you're going to be doing some of these things that you learned, not that you were born with. So it's not testing your, innate intelligence. It's kind of testing what you've learned in some cases. And so the question really comes a little early, and is, what is intelligence? And there I show the plant cell versus the animal cell, and I'm saying that any cell or the cell itself is a synonym of intelligence, because it's compartmentalized. Okay, it's it has a CPU, has a center that governs all its parts, and I think that's the best way to define intelligence, along those lines. And if that's so, even plants have intelligence, but the question is, people usually think of intelligence as something that's unique to humans. We have intelligence, nobody else does. Animals don't have intelligence, neither have plants. And so the question is, what do you mean by that? Are you saying the lion does not have intelligence? I mean, he's got a certain type of intelligence that he needs to do his daily work. He's got to hunt, he's got to figure out how he's going to catch that animal that he's going to be eating. So I guess he's got some kind of intelligence. Okay, he has a sense of timing. Okay, he's got a sense of time. He doesn't carry a wristwatch, but he knows how fast he is and how fast that animal runs, and so he more or less calculates, intuitively says, I can catch that guy. And that's why he runs. Otherwise, he doesn't take the trouble because it's too far away or too fast for him. And so what is intelligence? You have to define it first, and it's very hard to define intelligence, believe me. That's why I like to define it at the root. I'm saying that if it's just a CPU, something that governs, certain parts of itself, I think that's the rudimentary definition of intelligence. Okay, subject here, different. Fellow says, I'm not saying that chickens are dinosaurs, but that there are still dinosaur traits. Okay. Okay, so the question, a lot of people say, well, dinosaurs are still around. They're what? They're still around? I didn't know that. I better watch out, when I walk into those alleys, And what do they mean by that? They mean that, the birds are descendants. They think of them as descendants or as cousins, or who knows what goes through their mind. They think that birds and dinosaurs are more or less the same thing. And here you have one article, at least, that vouches for that. Says, are birds really dinosaurs? Is it disputed? It says, there's no longer really any doubt that birds are a type of dinosaur. These days, the debate is about details. The strong evidence doesn't just come from fossilized bones and similarities found across the skeleton, but from fossilized soft tissue. Okay, and it goes on and on. It says, birds belong to the theropod group of dinosaurs that included T-Rex. So they're theropods, right? Theropods are all bipedal, and some of them share more bird-like features than others. And they go with Archaeopteryx, discovered in 1861. They go Velociraptor, and there's a couple more, okay? And so the question is, are birds, they put these claims out there, and people start saying, oh, the dinosaurs are still around because they're flying now. And so the question is, are these dinosaurs? Are birds dinosaurs? Okay, and that's the question. So you can say, some people say, well, the dinosaurs never became extinct because they're still around. They're flying around now. These T-Rexes, these theropods, they're flying around. Okay, so here we have some of the early birds. Okay, you got there 160 million years ago. That was towards the end of the Jurassic, and then you got some 125 million years ago, maybe beginning of Cretaceous. And you had these birds. Did these evolve into you could call these the dino birds? Here are the reptibirds, reptiles, flying reptiles. Some of these apparently had feathers as well. And so the question is, are all these dinosaurs? Birds and anything that flies, are they dinosaurs? And I think we have to distinguish, certain types of animals out there. What if I told you that you're a synapsid? Synapsids were around at the beginning of the Permian all the way to the end of the Permian, and then they were gone forever. And so are we mammal-like reptiles, as the synapsids are also called? And so here's the question for those people who say that birds are dinosaurs. I'm going to say that then we're also synapsid for that matter, right? Because here's does your mother look like any of these? Are these the ones that are in your family? These animals, the Dimetrodons, the Paraiosaurs, they disappeared. Sometime during the Permian, the Dimetrodons disappeared first. Paraiosaurs towards the end of the Permian when the Triassic started. And so the question is, are we going to say that we are synapsids simply because we share some commonality with them? Those tiger-like animals or lion-like animals, they laid eggs. Have you ever seen a tiger lay an egg? Have you seen a wolf lay an egg or a bear lay an egg? And so, yeah, we have some features in common with the synapsids. That doesn't mean we are synapsids. And to say that birds are dinosaurs because they share some features with them or had a common ancestor doesn't mean that they are dinosaurs. Dinosaurs is a different order than birds. Okay, so it's wrong to say that birds are dinosaurs, first of all, and it's all these paleontologists, they want to be in the news, and they want to say these exorbitant statements, make these tremendous statements saying, oh yeah, the birds are dinosaurs, and people say, oh wow, they did a study and they showed that they're the same. No, that's just to create the oohs and ahs and get their name in the books. What you need to look at is, that they had a common ancestor. That doesn't mean birds are dinosaurs, and neither are we, synapsids. Okay, and so, you got to look at these things, not jump to conclusions or synthesize so swiftly. Okay, reach these general concepts, these general verdicts or whatever, conclusions. Okay, so here we have, Paul says, life after death is a classic oxymoron. Life and death affects all animal forms, including parasites and bacteria on all planets in the universe trillions of years ago and in the trillions of years to come. Yeah? If there was life after death, by definition, all parasites, small animals, dinosaurs, and bacteria would also have to exist sitting at God's side. I think that says it all, but believers would not be amused. Yeah, life after death is an oxymoron, because what you're saying is the person didn't die. You're saying the person now has a different form, but he's still moving around, moving his arms, legs. He's talking, he's listening, So how dead is he? Is that the definition of dead when it moves like the ghost there, So yeah, there is no such thing as life after death. Now the person says, well, because then what you're really saying is the person never died. He just transformed, from a bodily, piece of meat into a ghost, bed sheet, I guess. I mean, I don't know what a ghost is, what a spirit is. The soul, concept, thinking, goes to heaven. What is that? Is there a matrix up there in the sky, and you form part of the matrix and your soul just lives forever? I mean, you have to define these things if you're going to talk sensibly, and there's no way you can. There's no such monster as life after death, simply because, like this fellow says, it's an oxymoron. Life is life, and if you died, you can't say you're alive. You're still alive, because then you never died. Okay, we have a weird world today, a crazy world. Here we have this girl, right? And she's made by AI. That's what it's called. Aitana, right? Lopez, right? An agency created an AI model who earns up to $11,000 a month because it was tired of influencers who have egos. So they created this image, and it's, I guess you can say Photoshop. That's the best way to explain it, right? And yeah, we get this world where these, lots of people follow these things, and they say, oh, I'm going to look at these AIs that they created, and they create them with Photoshop, and they send their money in because, they're maybe affiliated with something out there. And or just the hits or whatever. And so these people are making money with images. And here are these guys at home, and they're just watching these things and saying, oh, look how beautiful that AI is, that robot, that image is. It's not a real image. It's one manufactured. So we do have a crazy world, believe me. Okay, final issue, a fellow says, does money exist if it's not an object? When money is no more, humans become extinct. Okay, does money exist right now in our present society? Does trade exist if money does not exist? And I answered this fellow the other day, but he came back with the same thing. I guess he didn't understand. So I don't know if I can, rub it in one more time. Exist, object plus location, right? You need an object to talk about existence. Otherwise, you cannot, in physics, in rational science, in the only science that there is, really. In ordinary speech, you can say whatever you want. You can say love exists. You cannot say love exists in science, okay? Because science requires that exist have an object. There has to be a thing there in order to talk about existence. You cannot say that mass exists, or that energy exists, or that field exists, or that charge exists, or that a wave exists. Okay, no such monsters. All these are concepts. Okay, mathematical concepts, especially. So exists. You need an object. And so again, he goes money and trade, but money is a static concept, right? Forget about static or dynamic. Both of these, money and trade, are concepts. So in science, in physics, right? You cannot say that a concept exists. Any concept, doesn't matter which one, okay? And so I don't know how to get through to this guy. You need an object. You need a thing. You need a table, you need a chair, you need a ball, you need the earth, you need a human. Then you can talk about existence. So if God wants to exist, he needs to choose whether he's an object or a concept, right? If he's a concept, then he doesn't exist. So you got an oxymoron there. But the only way God can exist in science is if God is a thing with that has shape, that which has shape. So then God, you can say, exists. At least if he's got location, but only under those conditions. Otherwise, you cannot say God exists, because if you're going to say God is intelligence, God is love, God doesn't exist by definition in science, in physics, under the definition we have in science. If you're going to go with a definition, the nonsense definition that they have in ordinary speech, which is a non-definition, no one has ever defined the word exists, then yeah, you can say anything exists. You can say love exists, God exists, whatever. Spirits exist, everything exists, soul exists, not in science. In science, it's got to be a physical object. So you can't say conscious exists, not in science. Okay, and so in physics, it's irrational to say that a concept exists, okay? When you suggest that money or trade exists, you are using ordinary speech, okay? Ordinary speech is outside the bounds of physics, outside the bounds of science. In science, we define our terms so that we can use them consistently and we can make ourselves understood by someone who's listening, an intelligent person who's listening, you can't use this term exist for concepts. And when you say money or trade, you can say that gold exists, you can say the paper, the bill, right? That exists, right? You cannot say that money exists, because money's here, not out there. And money is not a thing unless you make it into a thing and confuse it and say the dollar bill is money. No, the bill is one thing. Money is the value you give the dollar bill. Okay, so money is the concept. The bill is a thing. The bill might exist if it has location. Money never exists, because money is something you give value to and you're willing to exchange, trade. Okay, so let's keep the concepts separate from the objects.